Hey, happy Friday. And it is also a day on the transaction calendar. Kratz knows what's up, Cam. Kratz knows that I'm very good at pointing out the transaction days on the calendar. I'll be like, today is the qualifying offer deadline. Does anyone know what today's transaction deadline is that we'll get tonight, which could lead to maybe a trade or two, even during the show? Anyone know? You don't have
Cam,
to.
Cam
Talk
never went
talk
through
to
that.
me.
Non-tender?
I never went through that. Talk to me. I don't know. What we
They were
got?
always they stayed keeping Cam. They were just like, oh, we got Cam, we're gonna keep him. Tender that man a contract. Well, he didn't do too good. Give him some money. Who cares? Just give Cam money. He's got
Great
potential.
clubhouse guy. Potential's high.
Oh,
Potential's high.
potential, yes.
That's right. They're
Non-tender
like, you
day,
see
right
that
here.
smile?
Kratzy, you remember there was a time where guys got paid on potential.
Oh yeah.
Mark, there was, and that was the best time as a player. You're like, you know what? I like his projection. We'll pay him for that. He had a couple good years, but where he projects, I mean, that I miss those days, man. Hey, that's when the utility guy always had a big league job. He never got the big league invite. There's a difference. You know, he knew he was going to get it. Like the guy who he's that fourth guy. He can play everywhere. Now he knows probably going to have to go make the team and settle for less.
Yep.
I'm thinking of names. Okay, so I think pitchers get paid on projecting much more than hitters because you can make tweaks. Every team thinks they can turn a dude into gold. And here's the thing, there's a million examples of that happening. So what happens when you are, and I'll just throw strays at people, and I don't even remember their exact storylines, but Homer Bailey, Brett Cecil, some of these guys that signed big deals where they're like, oh, I think we can take him to another level. And they either got hurt or they didn't go to another level. And they can thank Charlie Morton or maybe name some of the pitchers that came over from overseas. Eric Fetty this year turned out to be, I think, quite the bargain based on what he's getting paid. Nick Martinez for sure. Yeah. So anyway, it's non-chicken tender deadline day, and that's at 8:00 Eastern time. And I just wanted to throw out a few names from last year's non-tenders. Tim Hill, very nice little reliever for the Yankees this year. Spencer Turnbull. Should have used him more. Yes, there was a certain spot in Game 1 of the World Series where we might have, seen him too soon.
The Bull, another good one.
Spencer Turnbull. Nick Senzel actually had a nice little bounce back, finally did some things, and Cooper Criswell. So some good names there. I mean, yeah, it's not the household names, but it's names to look up and say, maybe they should have gotten the tenders. So anyway, let's get to the big boys, the two highest paid position players in Major League Baseball. Let's charge the mound.
Charging the mound.
Cam, don't tell me money doesn't matter. The two highest paid position players in baseball on a per year basis based on present day value. So Shohei Ohtani's actual number is different from the $2 million he's receiving right now, with the rest of it being deferred. Congrats to him and to Judge. They're unanimous MVPs. This didn't seem too difficult in the end.
Yeah, and again, let's go ahead and make sure we say first DH to get him one too. So when to do it in both leagues is special, and I would like to hear from you guys. But I think as far as Shohei goes, I think it's his to lose. For the next 5 to 7 years. Dude, let's be honest. If they manage him the correct way as far as the innings and the workload, I mean, this dude's shown that as a hitter he's only getting better, and it's scary to say that. And then this year, the athleticism, we knew it was there, but he unlocked it with the help of the Dodgers organization. So I think it's his to win for the next few years, which will be incredible when we look back 8 years from now to see his run of just dominance. And then Aaron Judge, he's a guy who I think also for the next 4 or 5 years, especially when you look at the playoffs and the lack of success, I think, moments like that only motivate guys like Aaron Judge to come out and continue to get better, which is also scary. So, like you said, I mean, kudos to both of those guys for the consistency and how they continue to put on the show for the fans in the game of baseball.
One of the fears when you sign a guy like Shohei for 10 years, $700 million, cause he pitches and he hits, and then he doesn't pitch this entire year, obviously, because of the injury. They knew that. And then he comes out and has the MVP. Let's say the arm, for some reason, just doesn't come back, and his pitching is at craters. This shows that this 10-year contract, my guy can be out in the outfield and just slinging the rock all over the place in right field at Dodger Stadium. Like, it shows that there's still more to unlock at the plate. And when I talked to his hitting coach one of his hitting coaches for the last 2 years, he said, he told me, he said he could possibly hit 50 home runs because of how smart he is and how if he just focuses on hitting, he can stay in his legs, he can do all this stuff. And what Cam said, I think is the part that we need to just remember. We need to put what Cam said and put it on the loop. Just keep spinning it back. Because last year I was beating the drum so hard when players in the Players' Choice Awards chose Ronald Acuna as the best player in Major League Baseball. It's not even close. Like you're just choosing somebody besides Michael Jordan. If Shohei Ohtani pitches healthy and he hits, he should be the MVP of the National League for however many years he does that. I'm sorry. You can't take that away from him.
Kratz was dying on that take, and I actually think it was a great one. So, well done. Pat yourself on the back.
Let me add this too, and Kratz will appreciate this. We talk about him being just the DH. He's not just the DH. I mean, the man had 197 hits, and he scored 134 runs. Like that. Like we're talking about a DH. Like that, he was getting his team in positions to score more runs. Like he wasn't just driving them in. So I know he wasn't playing a position, but the numbers speak even louder than just the DH in my eyes.
Totally.
Okay, so there's two other things, Kratz, that define who you and me are as people. Okay, there's two other layers here of the MVP
Incredibly
results.
good looking. Incredibly
Besides
good
that, yes. Besides that, and
Jack.
the facial hair, down pat, all of that, right? Besides Kratz having accurate takes, there's two things that define us. Kratz is going to want to look down ballot and see who else got votes, and maybe even think, oh, William Contreras got beat out by DH Marcell Ozuna. And then me, what do? I go, Ketel Marte got an extra $3 million for finishing top 3 in MVP. That defines, does it not, Kratz? That defines what we look at when we see the rest of the MVP ballot after the unanimous one, which, let's be real, I mean, it's cool to give them love, but also it's kind of boring. There was no race to it. So I like to see who else got votes and money.
For sure. And I think Keith Law kind of let me look at this ballot, both these ballots, a little differently yesterday. Cam, you missed it yesterday. Keith Law told us to go touch grass, go ground ourselves, because we were talking about his questionable third place vote that he had in Manager of the Year of Ollie Marmol. And he's like, go touch grass, like relax. But I still look down the ballot and I'm like, wow, really? Like, are we opening up the DH conversation that much that Marcell Ozuna got this many picks? Because Cam didn't even hit on everything that Shohei did. The reason that DHs don't get enough love in the MVP voting is because he didn't do enough. Shohei did everything possible at the plate. I get it. He did not field any baseballs. I get that. But he did everything possible at the plate. My man stole over 50 bags. He hit over 50 homers. I don't agree with Marcell Ozuna being up here because, you know what? I think Bryce Harper had a better season, but I get it. I'm a homer, and that was my pick for MVP, so I need to see my guy boosted up the list a little bit more. And William Contreras, the dude's playing behind the dish. He's playing behind the dish. Marcell Ozuna's out here.
Let me say, but this is the thing. God, dog, Kratzy, you're my guy. This is the only thing. I think the Marcell Ozuna votes, I think those are warranted because if you look at the Braves situation, if you look at the amount of injuries they sustained during the season, I think the people who put him there, and this is me just thinking logically why, and it makes a little sense to me, is he literally was the most consistent Brave from beginning to end, right? We talk about a guy coming off a season prior to where at one point we thought he was going to get released, and then he turned it on and finished extremely hot. But from the beginning to end, when Olsen struggled, when Riley struggled, when Acuna went down, when Albies went down, Marcell Ozuna still kept them afloat, literally. The pitching was okay, but that dude put them on his back many a nights. The pitching was good, but I mean, Marcell Ozuna, you have to score runs. And many a nights when the pitching gave them a chance, who came through? Marcell Ozuna. So I feel you. I'm not saying I disagree, but I get the logic on where he was. I think that's why he was up there. It's like what he did for his team. Without him, the Braves would have been out of it.
And that's
but
value.
wait.
That's value.
Brent Rooker, obviously Jordan was really good, missed a little time. Brent Rooker, I don't think missed any time. I'll go back and check, but 165 OPS plus. Rooker missed 10 games. And
10 games.
And Ozuna was how many starts? Probably close to all. It's a little harder for me to look stuff up today.
He struggle busting in September.
Down the stretch. He was
down the stretch,
154.
He played 162.
Oh, he played every game. So he was a 154 OPS plus. Rooker was about 11 points higher than him on that front. My point is, obviously, they're in different leagues. I mean, Rooker didn't get nearly the love that Ozuna did, but the American League had some better depth of talent. Okay, you have Judge.
And again, I don't know how they pick it, Scotty, but it's like, I love Rook. He's awesome, but the Braves were in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure. I think some people value that at the end of the day.
No, at bats that are meaningful matter. I mean, that's the best way to put it, right? I mean, the A's weren't in it for the last several months, and I think you need to weight that however you want to weight that, right? There are a few ways to do that, but I do agree. I mean, to me, can an MVP be a player on a crappy team? Yes, but I do think there are determining factors that can help a player who's essentially playing playoff games in the second half of the season. Because that's what you get. And you guys can speak to this, right? If you're on a deadbeat team and they're a 100-loss team and you're in the second half of the season, doesn't the weight feel a little bit different on you versus if you're scrapping and clawing, you're the Braves, you lost half the team and you're trying to get into the wild card and you make it by a game? I mean, you're playing playoff games in September at least.
Hey, you know how you're the MVP on a losing team? Your name is Shohei Ohtani.
That's right. That's right.
That's it. That's all.
Trout.
That you know what I'm saying? Like, what any like, you know what I mean? Like, these are two of the greatest to ever live to play, to put on spikes. You know what I'm saying? So, you said it. Meaningful at bats matter, and Ozuna had those. I'm with you, Kratzy. I do feel you. I get where they were coming from.
Yeah. All right, so let's do this. Ken Rosenthal had an MVP vote. He's not allowed to tell us about it until obviously now it was revealed. So we can finally ask him full transparency, really get into his voting process. Yeah. What else you got?
I just was going to say I have one question about him, and maybe I need to touch grass, but I got one question for Ken
I can't wait.
On his list. And I wonder if you know, since we work together every day, which one, if you look at Ken's list.
I need to look at his ballot. So actually we'll do this. We can do this during the break for YouTube. We'll step aside for a sec for the TV crowd. We'll bring back Ken. We'll talk about his vote, and then we'll get into free agency and everything else too. Inside Dish coming up next. Okay, can you read out his ballot while we have 2.5 minutes here during the TV break? Yeah. YouTube crowd's here. Read it out, and then I'll try and figure out what happened.
Judge, Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, Jose Ramirez, Yordan Alvarez, Emmanuel Clase, Tarek Skubal, Jarren Duran, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Okay, so I have two questions there. One is Clase over Skubal.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Okay, that's the one that I want to ask Ken about, just to see what he thinks. Obviously, he didn't have Cy Young vote, but you know where he thinks that should have gone and is most valuable player. Because this is what I love about being able to ask the writers, even asking Law yesterday, like, hey, I want to ask him, like, what goes into it? Because these guys are so in tuned into the game, and we watch a ton of games. but I still have the bent like player side of me that will probably never vote a pitcher as an MVP. So I want to hear where the writers come in because they've done this for so long.
My other one was, and I mean, I just was wondering, I know you like Jose Ramirez, so I was like, maybe there's something there, but
I need it. That's my other question. But
he hits home for almost every player.
That was my question. I'm like, why wasn't he a little high? Where was he? Fifth? Where was he on that list?
Sixth?
Yeah, he was fifth.
Fifth? Okay.
I mean,
but the guys ahead of him. I mean, obviously Judge and Witt.
I just
okay.
maybe one more spot
Gunnar,
up.
okay.
Maybe one more spot up.
Who is 4?
I might have put him in front. I think I would have put him in front of Gunnar.
Really?
Me. That's where. So what if he goes?
But I'm okay. But I'm also okay with it. I'm also okay with Gunnar being there on his list. But Jose, man, like I said, he's not underrated. Can I say underappreciated?
No. If
like,
you're talking about this,
what am I looking for? What am I looking for, Kratz? You know what I mean? Like this guy's gonna be the Carlos Beltran of our era.
Quietly
he might
consistent.
never win. Like he just quietly consistent. Never wins an MVP. You know, drives in 100+ every year. He was 1 homer from 40-40. Like and like that's what I'm like. Do we, Kratz? Like I feel like we don't talk about him enough. Like he's the Carlos Beltran of our era. Like. You know, it's
there's always
one.
Dude, there's always every wedding there has to be a bridesmaid.
True. Time for the Inside Scoop. It is Ken Rosenthal, our FT Senior Insider. And Ken, now we can take a deep breath and ask you all about your AL MVP ballot. So do you want to run through how you looked at things? And of course, your thoughts on the results, which I don't think there's much to it.
Right. There was no surprise in the results. I guess the biggest questions for me were Gunnar Henderson and Juan Soto 3-4. And I heard what Cam just said about Jose Ramirez. He certainly was merited. Long look in that conversation as well. Long consideration. And I would agree with Cam that he is underappreciated. So that was kind of one decision. I ultimately went with Henderson 3rd and Soto 4th, Ramirez 5th, because Henderson, to me, his WAR was comparable to Soto. His offense was not what Soto's was, particularly in the second half, but he's an up-the-middle defender, pretty good defender. He didn't have an amazing defensive year, but he had a good year. And he's a guy also that was the centerpiece of everything that they did. And they had an amazing year. It didn't go as well toward the end, of course. So that is why I put him there. I know he had Santander with him, and Santander hit 44 homers, but Santander also had a 308 on base. He was not Aaron Judge, and that's the benefit that Soto had from being in the Yankee lineup. Nothing against him, of course. He did what he had to do. But that's why I went that way. And then lower in the ballot, I don't remember exactly where I had each guy now off the top of my head, but I had Clase up pretty high, and I had him ahead of Skubal. And some people I saw on X question that. The reason, to me, that a reliever placed so high is that, one, he had an amazing season, a historic season for a team that, of course, won its division. A reliever in an MVP race plays a more meaningful role in some respects than a starter does. He participates in more games. There you see it. Clase was 7, Skubal 8 for me. Guerrero, I might have had a little bit low. When you get down to the bottom of the ballot, guys, I don't know that it's that big a deal one way or the other. I know people go crazy. Oh my gosh, how could you have Clase 7th? I think there are bigger things to worry about. It's a personal preference at that point. But Judge over Witt unanimously, that was not a surprise at all. Witt getting all 32nd place votes, not a surprise. He deserved them. You could quibble certainly with Soto. He was an MVP finalist. Most people had him ahead of Henderson, though it was very close. But that was basically how I broke it down.
So now we need to know exactly what Keith Law said yesterday. He told us to touch grass. He told us to ground ourselves. We were talking about his 3rd place vote. So, and you've already hit that. You've hit that. You said, it's farther down on the ballot. I'm trying my best, that type of thing. If Jose Ramirez hits his 40-40 mark, does that change in your narrative? Because we have you on here twice a week, and I listen to Fair Territory twice a week. You always talk about the whole thing, and you even just said it. Class A's out there more often. It's hard for you to vote a DH because they're just not out there. Does that number 40-40, would that have given enough for Jose to jump maybe a Gunnar Henderson or a Juan Soto?
That's a good question. And he came close, right? And narratives do play a part in this. They necessarily shouldn't, but they do. To me, Jose Ramirez had an amazing year. And heck, I could have put him third regardless of 40-40, right? 40-40 should not matter when you come as close as he did. But at the same time, I just thought Henderson in the first half in particular was incredible. He was probably right there in the conversation for MVP of the first half. Now, he didn't have as good a second half. There's no doubt about that. It wasn't terrible. Still had a 799 OPS. But Ramirez is a guy that I'm going to go back to what Cam said. I do think he doesn't get enough due. And maybe my ballot reflects that, right? But I also should say this, guys. When you say, well, Keith said about touching grass, and I just talked about down ballot, we take the entire ballot seriously. I'm not joking around here, just filling in names. And it becomes a subjective process. It is a subjective process, and that's kind of the beauty of the MVP to me. That's why I always like MVP as opposed to best player. Best player, that's easy. MVP, because you're considering a player's contribution to his team and how meaningful that is, that's a hazier question, and it makes for better baseball discussion. We can argue about these things all day long, and your opinion, whoever's opinion is out there, all three of you guys, everybody else, it's as good as mine. But that's the way this process works, and frankly, it usually ends up in the right place overall, right? We got the right winners this year, I think, pretty much in every category. So you're going to have arguments along the way. We all understand that. Our ballots are public, fair game, and that's fair as well. But most voters, nearly all voters, I should say, take the process extremely seriously, and it's not something that we just sit down at the end of the season and say, okay, here's my 10. No, we're looking at it the whole year. We're judging it, especially in September. We're kind of starting to think about it more, and we go from there.
Let me ask you this, and you know what? One thing I do appreciate, Ken, you never hide. That's what I love. Whatever you do or say, you stand behind it. But you look at Aaron Judge and his incredible year, and you know, as the playoffs go on, I look at the Yankees fans and how disappointed they always are when they don't finish the job. You know, in my eyes, it doesn't, you know, overshadow anything. But do you think Aaron Judge's postseason somewhat overshadowed the amazing season that he had?
Yes, I do, Cam. And it is what Yankee fans will remember. Maybe all fans will remember to some degree. Now, obviously, an intelligent person can separate the two. We all know the regular season is one thing, the postseason is another. But Aaron Judge is going to hold a conference call today, and I'm sure the postseason is going to come up, right? I'm sure in spring training it's going to come up. It's a narrative that he's going to need to change at some point in his career. And I've always said this, and I'll maintain it with Judge. And to a certain extent, it started happening later in the World Series. He had a big game in Game 5 before the drop ball, of course. He is a guy that is a great player. Barry Bonds was a great player. There have been other great players who initially struggled in the postseason. And my feeling has always been, and I was taught this kind of at a young age, give a guy enough chances in the postseason, give a great player enough chances, he's eventually going to show why he's great. And obviously the pitching is tougher. The focus on these kinds of players in particular is more intense. And you can understand why it's not as easy for them. But we judge players by how they do in October. That's where they make their mark, their biggest marks perhaps. And Judge, to this point in his career, hasn't had that kind of amazing postseason experience.
Let me follow too, Ken, with this. And I was always an advocate prior to, and I know Juan Soto is still in limbo, but let's just say Juan Soto doesn't sign back with the Yankees. And I would never blame the longevity of a season on a misplay by Aaron Judge, but I still think his best value is in right field. I just do. Is there a world where if they don't sign Soto, he goes back to right field and they look for somebody else, if it's Jason Dominguez, to play center? But to sometimes I think to take some of that wear and tear off of his body, because playing center field, most of my career, it is hard on your body. And then, as the season gets in October, you start running on the balls of your feet. You start getting on your heels. I just think things like that, having to cover all that ground you saw during the postseason, is there a world where he goes back to right field?
There is a world where he goes back to right field. And frankly, even if they re-sign Soto, I know at that point he probably is in center, but they have got to think about getting him back to a corner. And Aaron Judge did not embarrass himself in center field last year. I don't care what the metrics say. They weren't good, right? They were well below average. He was toward the bottom of the league in metrics among center fielders. However, as I said, he held the position down, and he did it in a way that helped the team because it enabled Soto to play right, Verdugo in left. That was their best option. But for his long-term benefit, and for the team's long-term benefit, he's best in right. He is best in right for the reasons you stated, the wear and tear on his body, and he is also an above-average right fielder. He's a really good right fielder. So I don't know how this plays out if they re-sign Soto, but yes, it would behoove them to get him back to a corner, and it would probably be better for his career as well. Now, he does like playing center field. It's almost like Mookie Betts enjoying playing shortstop. Judge played center field in college, and he has spoken about how he likes seeing the whole field, being in that kind of commanding, captain-like position in the defensive situations. But Cameron, you're absolutely right, man. He's better off in a corner.
All right, Ken, let's hit free agency for a few minutes here to finish. So I see one or two Bregman Astros questions popping up, which actually fits perfectly into something we have planned for later in the show. We do free agent fits. We pick where we think a free agent is going to end up, basically just a prediction segment. So if you want to throw a team out there for Bregman, and also maybe get into what you wrote about in your notes column in The Athletic about Bregman and the comp that he is reaching for.
Right. Well, what I wrote was this, that most of the projections for Bregman seem to be in the $150 million to $180 million range. What I wrote, and I was very clear about this, but people took it the wrong way. I said, I suspect that he's going to seek a deal closer to Manny Machado's 11-year, $350 million extension with the Padres. Now, I don't have information to that regard. I was just saying I suspect it. Because when you break those two guys down, it's closer than you might think. And Machado obviously is Machado. He's an elite defender, and he's a great player. But in many ways, so is Bregman. And again, comparing the numbers and just what they've accomplished, Bregman, of course, has the amazing postseason experience as well. He is a guy that I can see wanting more than 150 to 180 when Manny got 350. I'm not saying that's what he's looking for. I don't know what he's looking for. But I suspect that he sees himself, and Boris sees him as that kind of guy. So let's make that clear. That was my opinion. Now, as for the teams that fit, it could be any number of them, right? Detroit with A.J. Hinch. That's one team he could be linked to and will be linked to. Houston, of course, wants him back. I could see the Mets or the Yankees, more so the Mets than the Yankees because of what happened in 2017, if indeed they are Soto losers. And he could end up in other places as well. He is someone that right now, because Matt Chapman signed his contract with the Giants, is the best third baseman available. And that's a spot where a lot of teams have, I don't know if I'd say absolute needs, but certain needs. There are ways that he can go to other teams too in other positions, maybe second base. So I expect Bregman to do well. I don't know how well in terms of his finances and what he's going to be paid, but he's got a pretty strong resume, put it that way.
If you guys don't believe what Ken just said, I did the research after I read what you wrote, and it is very intriguing, very amazing. So do research before you blast Ken on your local social media platforms. One team that's not going to be getting Bregman,
no one will, Erik. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Nobody will? Okay, that's fine. Well, maybe my tens of fans will follow what I say and go and do your own research. But one team that won't be getting him is going to be the A's, the Athletics, whatever we're calling the ATHs, and they may not be able to get any free agents. Can you tell us anything about like the struggles that they're clearly running into, needing to play in West Sacramento?
Right. There's an interesting situation developing with the A's beyond the stadium stuff. During the GM meetings, their general manager, David Force, said, listen, we know players are not going to want to necessarily come to Sacramento, play in a minor league park. We are more focused on trades than free agents. That's the way for us to acquire players. The problem that they're running into is that most teams this year, with the possible exceptions of the White Sox and the Marlins, are trying to upgrade their major league rosters. So the kinds of trades that the A's want to make for major league players are difficult. They're not able to trade prospects for players because teams don't really want prospects. They want major leaguers. From the A's, they want guys like Brent Rooker and J.J. Bleday, perhaps Mason Miller. And those are guys that the A's want to keep and build around. They want to go forward now. They want to start contending and competing in a more meaningful way. So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Can't sign free agents. Difficult to make trades in this environment right now where everybody's trying to upgrade. And I don't know necessarily how they're going to figure this out, but it's certainly going to be a challenge for their general manager, David Forst, and the rest of that front office.
Ken, let's finish with the Rays, since the Rays and A's always feel linked these days, but not about the specific ballpark situation where they're going to play in the future, all of that, but the roster itself, which you wrote about. We didn't get to it, I think, much on Fair Territory, but do you see them continuing to sell? I know they always kind of sell, but in my head, I'm like, okay, when you're Kansas City and you're trying to get a new ballpark, what do? You re-sign to Bobby Witt to a long-term extension. You go get the Waka and the Lugo and all that, and it's worked out, right? They didn't get the approval yet for the ballpark, but on the Tampa Bay side, I think they're such a bottom line team that they're going to say, we're losing more money next year because we have to play in a minor league park. We got to pay the Yankees, the whole deal. So does it seem like they're actually going to lower payroll and they're not trying to impress the city and say, hey, look, we're really building something here?
For starters, Scott, the city question, the county question is entirely separate from baseball. It's not at a point where if they do some things, it's going to impress those people. It's a financial question. It seems to be a political question, and it has nothing to do with the baseball side. There are no votes coming up that are going to change this thing. So ultimately, what they want to do is keep going and try to be as competitive as possible. Remember, they trimmed about $40 million in salaries at the deadline. When they traded Arozarena and Adam and all those guys, they took down their payroll quite considerably for the future. So they can afford to keep Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz and some of their more expensive players. The question is, how are they going to figure this whole puzzle out? And will they get enough of an offer for any of those guys to make a trade justifiable? They can do that. And they will do that. We've seen that in the past. But this is not a Tyler Glasnow situation where someone's earning $25 million. This is a situation where they've got guys like Yandy at 8 and Brandon Lau at 10.5. They can afford him. And I got to go if you hear that doorbell.
Hey, I like that. Well, it's perfect timing. So that was the last question. So Ken, enjoy your package, whatever you get today. I'm sure it's awesome, and enjoy your Hello Fresh or whatever else it is at the door. And we'll talk to you next week and we'll hear from you on Fair Territory.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. All right. Good timing. Little company for Kenny Ballgame. Hey, we're back. And by the way, Fair Territory Mondays and Thursdays. So if we didn't get to one of your questions or you want to send us a question via Twitter, usually on the weekend, Ken will post on Sundays. Hey, do you have a question for me? They take some time, go through those questions, and the ones that aren't ridiculous, they will try and mix into the show. I saw, Kratz, that Ken said people were going probably after him on Bregman and his comp and aspirations. And without even checking what's going on, I know what it is. I'm sure there are over defensive Padre fans that are like, Manny Machado is the best player ever. How could you compare those two? Blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of really great, passionate Padres fans, and there are some that just can't get off the same few topics, and it is nauseating online. So you know who you are, and if you're not one of them, you know who you are. We speak to Padres fans, I think, pretty well. We have many that comment in YouTube, but some that just go out there and they just can't get over their troll self.
And maybe they're still a little big mad about the playoffs and how they got, I mean, Ken is just, he's the best writer there is out there. And he says the things he says just out of research, just out of knowledge, just out of talking to people. He's not just like me or Cam, who are like, I really think Breggy looks good. He pulls the ball out into the Crawford boxes. No, this man is well researched. You go and research it yourself. And whoever was dinging on the doorbell, in my mind, I think it's one of the neighbors, and they wanted Ken to come out and play wiffle ball. Ken is probably going to go out and play wiffle ball.
I don't feel like that's him. Oh, Cam, you look great,
Cam's
but
muted. You look great, though.
Try again.
I was muted.
There we go.
I was muted. But you're right, Kratz. It's always a very unbiased but very well researched and thought out opinion. So it's never personal. It's always business with Ken.
Mhm.
Just go look it up. Just go look the numbers up, because I think Bregman is actually one of the most underrated, best, if not the best, postseason performer also
Boom.
of this generation of player right now. Like, we're talking Jeter-esque numbers.
But you're projecting forward, and he's in his 30s. He took the
Manny?
team-friendly deal. I'm talking about Bregman. Bregman took the team-friendly deal to extend his time to get to free agency. You know, if he was a free agent, it would have been what? At least 2 years ago, maybe more. At least
Look
2
who has
years
the most recent Gold Glove, Manny or Breggy?
Different leagues, but understood.
Oh, okay.
You telling me you want Breggy over Manny at third?
Didn't say that.
Evan Drellick from The Athletic put in an article out about the ABS system, aka robot umps, and that MLB is definitely going to test that out in spring training coming up in 2025. Not in every ballpark, but it sounds like they'll be set up in enough ballparks to be able to really do some damage here. At 13 ballparks hosting 19 teams, which could lead to regular season use. Not in 2025, but in 2026, the league is expecting to give teams 2 challenges per game in spring training. They got that number down to 2 at the end of this past season in the minor leagues. It was 3. They felt like that was stopping things a lot. And also, you keep your challenge if you're correct. So it just puts more of the pressure on to get it right and keep the challenge alive. Like, I could see a situation, it's 5th inning, you feel like you got worked, but you already burned 1 challenge and it's a little bit close. And you're like, yo, I got to save this, because if I get absolutely screwed in the 9th inning later on, and this is a big game against a division rival, I can't afford to use this up now and not have any left. So anyway, there's that. And then lastly, at the bottom of the article, but I think this is important too, Commissioner Manfred said they have to collectively bargain a new contract with the umpires. That contract expired after this season. And of course, the robo ump situation is part of that. Manfred said, quote, we're going to have to work through that issue as well. So what do we like? What do we not like? Besides me banging the drum for a while now saying that I think they should test this in spring training. And then if it works, do the challenge system in 2025. I do not want to wait a whole nother year of absolute atrocious calls that we cannot overturn. The close ones, they're close. But the really bad ones, I really want to be able to switch that now, Cam. I feel like we're at a point where the technology is ready. The world is ready for the challenge system.
Well, not only is the technology ready, but I think we're at a point where I think the normal fan, I think even ex-players, I think what we are tired of seeing is the back and forth between player and umpire, right? The ego coming into play during the game. I think with the challenge, the challenge coming into play, I think it immediately cleans up the bickering back and forth, right? Now we have a system where we can just challenge it. I don't have to argue with you. Same as on the bases, where there's like a stolen base attempt and it's outer safe call. Guys aren't arguing anymore. They're just, hey, giving the little signal, go to the headphones, let's check it. And I've been an advocate for it too, because I still do feel like the game that I fell in love with as a kid, I think it needs the human element. But I think instead of the robo zones, I think if you add the challenge element, it still allows us to have that human element, that human aspect that I think the game needs. But I think it might also too incentivize these guys to lock it in a little bit more. I think right now, if you ask me, a third of the umpires do a really good job. Not saying they all don't care, but I think if you put that type of pressure to incentivize that, hey, we're going to have a challenge system, I think these guys are going to lock in. I think they will get better.
For sure. I think they will. I think some want to. I think some could care less. So I think it's a checks and balances because they're all human. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to get a call wrong on the bases, even though I know an umpire was quoted as saying, "Oh, great. I'm glad that we have replay. Now there's no pressure on me to actually get the call right." So maybe it takes some of the pressure off of guys too. But this whole system, this whole like collective bargaining part of the ABS system, this was in the last CBA. This was in the last collective bargaining agreement. It was a big standing point for Major League Baseball that maybe we will get the robo umpires. When I say robo, the challenge system in during this CBA. Credit to Major League Baseball. They did not push this system because it is not perfect yet. They have not pushed it. They wanted it in this CBA, and the entire duration of the CBA went through, and it still hasn't. So now it has to get pushed into the next one. Major League umpires want their salaries to be consistent with how players' salaries have gone up, and they got that a little bit. That'll be their the biggest standing point is they want their salaries to continue to increase as any union does. But I think the biggest thing is going to be that midway point. That's going to be the point of contention because if you see the system now, that midway point where they start the strike zone is in the middle of the plate, 8.5 inches, very center of the plate. I think that when they start having big league pitchers throwing big league pitches is going to actually have to get moved back, but that's just me going too far into the weeds with it.
I know what you're saying, though. They're going to find the video game glitch, Cam.
I was going to ask Kratzy, before you go too deep in the weeds, I'm also curious, too, with the technology. Is it a situation where, we actually know the guy who's coming up to the dish? Is he 6'4" or is he 5'11"? Is it Judge or is it Altuve? You know what I mean? Is that system changing to each individual guy, like you said, to make it as perfect or as accurate as it possible can be? So you're absolutely right, Kratzy.
And I won't to say the team when this stuff started first coming out because I don't want anybody to be blasting that team for trying to cheat. It's just teams. Every team's doing it because Major League Baseball came through and they did a digital height check on everybody, and they were going to put that into the system of how they're doing the ABS. Exactly. So, guys, team officials, people who are in charge of this team said, make sure you're not standing fully upright when you're doing this. I did it. I saw it. So they have to make sure they know that teams are doing this because Jose Altuve does not have the same zone as Aaron Judge does. Obviously, we're talking two ends of the extreme, but they're both measured. What happens if one of them's a little bit spottier? I'm just saying. So there is things people are already trying workarounds.
This is too good, Cam. This is like when you go to the doctor's office, you're getting your annual checkup, or you're getting your physical, and you're like real puffing up, like, oh yeah, I gotta get myself an extra quarter of an inch. And then this time it's like, oh, let's measure this big hulking DH, and you're like, kind of leaning back a little bit, like, oh, are you, sir? Can you please stand up straight? No, this is me. I have a posture issue. So, sir,
I got the 100 pence hump. The 100 pence.
Yeah,
that one here. The 100 pence. Yep.
Oh, I guarantee you, if I get measured, I can get an inch of variance if I do this because I got the broad shoulder action, or if I go like this, I can at least get myself an inch more of the plate. So this is fascinating. This is a big report. This is a scathing investigative report from Erik Kratz. But I do think they're going to have to be careful. It's something you really don't think about. It's the game inside the game from foul territory. How tall are you really? Anyway, all right, let's come back with Tommy Saggese, Cardinals org. We'll talk to the young slugger next on FT.
Muted like a mug, Scott. We can't hear nothing.
I'm glad.
Now we can. They don't mute
Thank
me
you.
because they know my voice is my best feature. They mute you guys because they're like, people will still keep watching just because of your guys' beautiful faces.
Thank you. We have this, it's called the smile button, where you're really just looking at the smile. You're not really listening. So that means people don't like
Right.
what's coming out of your mouth. Just some feedback throughout the show so far today. Farrell said, does anyone remember who got third, fourth, fifth in an MVP race more than 2 weeks out? No, I mean, not generally. But I will say, for some reason, there's certain players where something sticks out and I'll be like, hey, that season. Okay, let me give you an example. 2023, Sonny Gray did not win the Cy Young, right? In the American League with the Twins. But I'm trying to remember if he finished second or third. But I remember it was part of a case because you're trying to tell people how good this pitcher really is. And it's part of the free agent case, right? Because he signed as a free agent a couple years ago with the Cardinals. And I'm like, this guy finished second or third, whatever it was. You're right. I don't remember if it's second or third, but my point is sometimes I do use that, where you'll say, like I might say, hey, Lindor, this was the second place guy, especially in the National League right now where it's Ohtani and like Kratz said, I mean, he might win the next 3 or 4 in a row here if he's throwing darts from the mound. So you might remember the second place guy a little bit more over the next several years.
It's a resume builder. Maybe people, maybe it takes a little bit. But it's a resume.
Agents remember it.
Like how many?
What you're saying, Scotty? The agents are like, hey, player option. Hey, he's been in the top. Jose Ramirez, he's been in the top 5 of the MVP voting the last 5 years. I mean, depending on where you are in that contract or that free agency, they remember it for sure.
How about 10 seasons? How about 10 seasons of Paul Goldschmidt finishing in the top 11? I'm sorry, twice. He was 20 but finishing in the MVP voting before he finally won it. Like that does matter. So those votes do matter, and I get it. You probably can't remember how many times, but it matters.
I'm with you.
Goldie, back home. Send Goldie back to AZ. I want to see it. I want to see it. Look,
oh,
it's crazy. I was thinking, me and Kratzy share brainwaves all the time. I was thinking Goldie this morning when I woke up. 2-year deal, Arizona Diamondbacks. Let's go.
I could see it, but for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
We're back. It's Thomas Saggese joining us from the St. Louis Cardinals organization. Debuted this year, one of their top prospects on FT. Thomas, how you doing, man? And do you go by Thomas or do you like Tommy or don't care?
I don't care. I'm doing well.
Nice.
How are you guys?
Good. How's the offseason treating you? And now when you reflect on, first off, officially being a big leaguer, what did you think about it now that you have some time to process?
Pretty sweet. Pretty cool. Definitely shocking at first and just crazy and surreal at first. Now that I've had some time to think about it, it's more like, how do I get better? How do I get to the point where, I'm a bona fide big leaguer and I'm there and I'm there to stay, and then how do we win, So the surrealness and the fun part of it, obviously it's all fun, but the craziness of it lasted maybe for that brief stint I had this last year. Now it's just like, okay, how do I perform at this level now? So,
hey, Tommy, and Maybin here. I want to ask you, people who don't know you, I've kind of done my homework. One thing that I've quickly developed the appreciation for is the fact that you kind of have an old school approach. You really care about putting the ball in play. And with that said, sometimes people, they don't know what type of player you are. Can you kind of give us a little bit of insight on what type of hitter are you? Are you gap to gap? Are you a guy who likes to spray the field? Or are you a guy who feel like you can do a little bit of everything? I want people to learn a little bit about you, because when you talk about a guy going to the fall league, well, I think you had more walks and strikeouts. You really care about putting the ball in play. Can you touch on that for me?
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. I hate striking out, and I've just always hated striking out, and I think that's kind of one of my strengths is being able to put the bat on the ball. And that was kind of an emphasis in the fall league, was to be able to put the bat on the ball, but be a little more selective so that I could try to walk a little bit more and try to kind of make myself more of a complete hitter. And I really see myself kind of as somebody who could do it all and stay gap to gap, hit for a little bit of power, hit for good average. And, the goal is to walk as much as I can, and at the same time not strike out as much as I can, or strike out as little as I can, which is a hard thing to do in today's day. But that's the idea, and I'm just trying to really get on base. And for me, when I'm good and I'm putting the barrel on the ball, usually the extra base hits come, so I don't really think about that or worry about that too much. So, yeah.
Okay, with that approach said, I like that breakdown. With that breakdown, who was the guy that you modeled your game after? Who did you enjoy watching, or was there somebody who made you want to be that type of complete ball player?
That's a good question. I just grew up a really big baseball fan. I was a really big Yankee fan, so I was really into Derek Jeter in the younger years. And then growing up in San Diego, I was a big Padre fan, so I guess that was a little later, but became a pretty big Padre fan. But Derek Jeter's my go-to. That's definitely my role model and the guy that I try to be like and try to play like, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna hit you on a little where you're at right now, because we lost the closet doors to your closet, and we know it's your birthday. But I looked up, your birthday is April 10th. So tell us about the collage that you got for on your poster on the wall back there. You got a Happy Birthday Thomas poster. Are you in someone else's room that's a big Thomas fan?
No. That's just a poster my girlfriend made for me a while ago. That was for my 18th birthday. Yeah,
Oh
I don't think.
wow! So is that a poster of you then in the background too?
Yeah, uh, yeah, it is. It is.
That's
I
boss.
didn't.
That's boss. I love it. I love it. Because you know what? I have to then ask you, talked about your big league debut this year. You saw that the A's are going to be playing in Sacramento, and you saw that the Rays are going to have to play at George Steinbrenner because the roof blew off. What if your big league debut, because it's fresh on your mind, didn't come in a big league park? What if it came in one of those two places? Would it still would have meant a lot because you made the big leagues and you're pushing for that goal to make the big leagues. But would it have been different if you were like, dang, I kind of wish this was like Fenway, or I kind of wish this was, PNC Park?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. That's a good question. I think for me, it wasn't as much about the park and as much about all that stuff as it was more so kind of the intangibles of like, this is the big league. So I don't think for me it would have mattered too much, because once my first game started, I was like, okay, this is the same thing. This is the same game that I've been playing for my whole life, and so I don't think it would have meant as much as, I don't know. That's actually, but it would be cool to debut in a place like Fenway or Yankee Stadium or Wrigley, just some places with some history behind them. But I think it's still. I mean, I don't think you're thinking about that. I think you're just like, dang, this is sick. I'm in the big leagues. So I think.
Yep.
And Tommy, either way, there would be a story to it, right? So if you're telling everyone for the rest of your
That's,
life that you debuted at either at home or at Yankee Stadium, Fenway, Wrigley, whatever, that's cool. But also, it could have been the story of, guess what? You'll never believe where my big league debut was. Sacramento, California. Like, what? That doesn't make sense. Are you sure that was the big leagues? Yes, that was. But anyway, we do have a fan question here. So Jimmy wants to know what your favorite road ballpark is. And, obviously you don't have a ton of a selection yet. It was a short major league stint. So if you do want to drop in a minor league park, then you can too.
I really liked. I played at 3. I played at Coors. I played in Toronto, Rogers Center, and at the Giants place. I really liked Toronto. Coors was really cool too, but I really like Toronto, so I'd say that's my favorite.
All right, we had Colton Wong on the other day. Colton Wong was talking about he came up through the Cardinals. I know you came up with the Rangers. You got drafted by the Rangers, which brings me to another question about when you were drafted. But I'm gonna go one question at a time here. But do you feel like the Cardinal way, is taught enough to guys who are traded over? I'm sure you've heard guys talk about it. Did they give you the handbook and all that stuff?
They didn't really give me like the handbook, but it's pretty clear. And I came up with the Rangers, and they were pretty into all the little things. So I kind of came up in a good organization for that. And I think it's pretty clear, like what they expect and how to go about it. I mean, that's just the right way to go about it. And really, every organization should be teaching those things. And I was lucky enough with the Rangers to be taught those things in the first place. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear, and they do a pretty good job of, and the other players do a good job of kind of showing you and, leading by example and just the do's and don'ts and whatnot. So yeah, I'd say they're not explicitly telling you, but it's kind of it's kind of heard through the line, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, it doesn't happen everywhere. As somebody who played in 14 different organizations, it doesn't happen everywhere. So appreciate that part of it. I want to hit you getting drafted. 2020, people probably don't remember how many rounds were in the 2020 draft.
5. It's just 5.
And you were drafted in the
5th round. Yeah.
Were you nervous going into it that you weren't going to get taken? Because people don't understand, there used to be 50 rounds. There used to be unlimited rounds. Then it was 50. Then it went down for the COVID season. Then it went down to 5. And now they've reduced it to 20. And I bring this up because I was taken in the 29th round. And if it were today or the COVID season, I would have never had a shot at being drafted. I would have never, had a shot at playing in the minor leagues and eventually the big leagues. So when it came to that 5th round, were you like, oh, crap? Or did you already have an oh, crap moment before when you heard that the draft had gotten cut down?
I really didn't think about it that much, to be honest. I wasn't really a big name coming out of high school. I didn't go to a bunch of showcases. I wasn't highly recruited to colleges really up until late, and up until after my junior season. I never really did anything flashy or crazy, so I didn't really stand out at those types of things. So I really was I didn't even know what to expect. If you would have told me that junior year of high school that I was going to get drafted out of high school, I would have said you're nuts. So for the opportunity to just get drafted at all was kind of crazy. And especially a 5 round, I was like, I'm probably just going to go to college, which I was perfectly fine with. I just was looking forward to playing. So then there was never really a moment like that, if that makes sense. There's never really oh crap, I might not get drafted, because I was fine with going to school and then trying to do my best to get drafted out of college. So there's never really that moment. It was just kind of all just add-on, like an add-on, if that makes sense. I wasn't really expecting it, and then when the Rangers told me they were going to take me, it was pretty crazy, pretty cool because of that, because I was kind of not really expecting it.
Man, so okay, with that said, I'll welcome you into the club. Kratz in the club as well. It's the Team Grinders Club. So welcome. That's what that sounds like to me, right, Kratz? Team Grinder?
Stop. No. Stop. Grinder.
I'm not in that club.
Stop, Cam. Don't do that.
In that club.
Cam, don't do that to that man. You ain't a grinder. There's only one
All right.
grinder here.
Well, Kratz ain't welcome you into the club. All right. Well, if he won't, I will.
Nope.
I'm letting you in. I'm the bouncer at the club. Then how about that, Kratz? Can I be outside the club? Can I be outside?
Yeah, you can come hang out with us.
You know,
but you ain't a
I like
grinder.
hanging out with the grinders at least. You feel me? Like,
Yeah.
come on, bro. But with that
You ain't there,
said,
Cam.
Tommy, you know, you talked about right now the short the short experience that you've had in the big leagues. You know, one thing that I stand by, you know, throughout my career is I think the St. Louis Cardinals have the best fan base, right? I think they have a fan base that truly just enjoys the game. They want to see a well-fought, competitive show. How do you feel about the Cardinals fans, and how have they received you? Have you had any interaction at all? Have you maybe gotten into the community or just kind of interact with that fan base? And what do you think?
Mostly from what I've heard, it's pretty cool, and they seem very, very devout. And I had the privilege to go to a fan fest last off season, and you know, I had just got traded over. I'd spent maybe a month in the Cardinals organization, and you know, there's a bunch of people coming up to me and getting stuff signed from me, and just, you know, supporting me. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really eye-opening just to see how many people there. I was like, I'm just, and at that point I hadn't been in the big leagues yet, and I was just a minor leaguer. I'd barely gotten to AAA at that point, and to see how many people were there supporting me, I was like, wow. So it's definitely different. It's definitely a different style of a different fan base in the best ways possible. You know, they really care, and they really want to see you succeed. And yeah, I didn't get to experience that much of it just because I was only up for 3 weeks or so, but just to see everything at FanFest, and then to see what went on when I was there, it's pretty cool. And the other thing is, even in the minor leagues, you know, Cardinal fans everywhere, and they travel well too. And you know, in the minor leagues, I didn't feel very important, but a lot of the fans made me feel important, which is it was really cool. And I'm really looking forward to getting to experience more of that this next year and for the years to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know if fans realize this, but to me, and I'm sure to you even more so, I think that's an advantage when you have a fan base that rallies behind people, even, you know, before they're stepping foot in the bigs or just getting going in the big leagues. Okay, my last question for you, Tommy, is about the trade. So you're part of the Jordan Montgomery trade. It's not just a part of history for you and for Jordan, it's a part of major league history. Jordan Montgomery was a dude in 2023. He helps the Rangers win the World Series. That also includes the Diamondbacks being transparent about how they were hot after Jordan Montgomery didn't get him. Those two teams meet in the World Series. So when you look back, how cool is it to be a part of Major League history in terms of leading to a team winning a World Series? Do they win the World Series without Jordan Montgomery? I'd say not necessarily.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Obviously, like, that's more of a thing that you want to be a part of, and I want to win one myself. I've thought about that a couple times and thought you know, that's pretty cool. And more so just cool for the people I know with the Rangers, just seeing people go to the World Series and win it. And I'm really close with Evan Carter, and seeing him go crazy in the playoffs and then win the World Series. And I thought that's really fun. That was the part for me that was really cool to watch. As much as the historic part and whatnot, it's, you know, I want to win one myself. You know, I don't, like, it's cool to be a part of history for sure, but definitely gives me the feeling of like, I want to go do that now, you know?
Yeah, I like that. It's like the second part of the story. So, oh, that trade back in the day, it had so JC part of it. And you're like, oh, that trade worked out for both sides. They both ended up winning the title out of it. So, yeah, to be continued, right?
Definitely.
Tommy, well, awesome having you on, man. Thanks for the time hanging with us here on FT. This show gets played all over the St. Louis area too, so people love to see you on here. And good luck the rest of the offseason. We'll catch you in spring training down in Florida, all right?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Tommy Saggese joining us on FT. Be right back to do free agent fits. Alex Bregman is the man of the day. So now I could actually, for the first time, I think, on this show, ask you for your thoughts now that it's over, that Oakland is not going to have baseball, at least for the short term, and how this looks for a player that, especially a vet, is on a team that is going to play years and years at a minor league facility, and like what it means for the sport. Because I know you're opinionated on this stuff and you have a connection there, and honestly, it sucks.
Yeah, it definitely sucks. I mean, both my wife and I watched that last game at Oakland, and I teared up. It was an emotional day. I mean, I spent 5 years there. I spent a good term of my entire baseball life there, and it was also I was mediocre. I was good, and had some really good years at the end, and so it completely tracked my trajectory. And I don't think without Oakland I'd be where I am today. I don't think without Oakland in that situations I would still be playing baseball. And so it definitely weighs on my heart. I've got a little bit of dirt from the Coliseum Mound that's up there that I started collecting. We went there early this year, so went and grabbed it then. But yeah, it sucks. It's unfortunate because I think anybody who, as a fan, goes there, the stadium not great. Anybody who played there, other than the clubhouse and all that sort of stuff, the playing surface, by far and away the best in the league. It was phenomenal. The mound was fantastic. The dirt was fantastic. The grass, even when they were playing football on it, it was a fantastic place to actually play. I mean, I'm a bias as a pitcher because it was fantastic for me even more. But there was a lot of positives to what they were able to do with what they were given. And that's something that it just sucks. I mean, I've said it before, but you're rewarding the ineptitude of an owner.
Excuse me. We've been talking about a guy for a little time now, Juan Soto. We're talking with him and how, there was some big talks, 3-hour meeting. I mean, that's got to be a little bit exciting just to hear that news.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you look at from our roster breakdown point of view, does it make the most sense? No. But how many times does a guy of Juan Soto's caliber at his age come up on the free agent market? And when you've got pockets enough to be able to delve into it, you may as well check it out. You may as well do your due diligence. And you know what? He's a generational player that you can build around. And I don't think there's ever going to be anybody that stops him in a lineup. So you may as well try and go out there and do what you need to do to meet him and see what his demands are and see if it aligns with where we're going. And I mean, from all I know, we're going full metal, and hopefully we can make those big moves and big splashy moves because it's the AL East. It's not exactly a league where you can, or a division where you can just kind of coast by.
One of the stars of the intro, Free Agent Fits, is on the clock today, and it's Alex Bregman. He's probably not going to sign for a minute because I think most dudes are going to wait until Juan Soto goes, and most teams are feeling the same way. But let's get into Bregman's spot right now. So I'm going to start because I already saw where he's going, Cam. There was a really nice Retros Tiger logo there, and I don't know if we were supposed to show that because we know, but I do feel like it's a great fit for a team that's on the rise. They do definitely need to sign at least 1 or 2 starters, but another way to amp the run prevention is to sign a guy that AJ Hinch is super comfortable with. So what do we think about Bregman to third for the Tigers? I know they have Jace Young. He could bounce around a little bit. Also could serve as some trade bait for the Tigers if they are going to go that route. But either way, I don't feel like there's such a logjam yet of position players that they couldn't fit one guy. And to me, Bregman is kind of the opposite of Baez. Baez comes in, does his own thing. That was a bust of a signing. There's no doubt about that, right? And it's an infielder that they thought was going to lead the next great Tigers team. Bregman's what they were looking for. He's the guy behind the scenes who is a scouting monster. He makes sure every single player knows exactly what they're doing for that particular game, and he makes everyone around him better. And that's just not Avi Baez. He's quiet, he's going in, he's doing his thing, and he's going home.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think Kratz hit on it earlier in the segment. He is also a playoff menace. We're talking about dude who, when the light is the brightest, he comes through and he shines. So I think when you have that type of pedigree, that type of leadership, his will to win, I think is as big as anybody's in the game. And I think with all that's went on in his career, I think he still plays with a huge chip on his shoulder to prove that, listen, I am one of the best third basemen in the game right now. And I think when you pair that with the young talent that they have, I've been in the clubhouse with Alex Bregman. One thing that he does, and I think a lot of young guys don't know how to do, is value what it takes to get a win in the big leagues, right? You know, a lot of times you win games and guys come in, they hit the shower, they're in and they're out. One thing that I learned early on playing with Alex Bregman is he's going to make sure when you win a ball game, you come in, you sit around, you talk about it, you acknowledge guys that came through that night. You really start to appreciate what it takes to win as a team. And I think the Astros with AJ Hinch are already so close. When you pair these two back together, their will to win and be great, I think it's something that the Tigers is desperately missing. I think Alex Bregman would be a great fit. You know, I'm just going to throw it out there. JD Martinez may be in a DH role for a year. I don't know, but Alex Bregman, I think, would be the perfect fit. And I think the city, the fans of Detroit, would love a guy like Alex Bregman, the way he plays, his ability to be available. I think the Tigers fans would really appreciate and give him the love that I think he needs going from the Astros to a different team.
Do we think that the Astros are bowing out of this season? I don't think so. And if the Astros' number one priority, not my words, the Astros organization, I'm not sure if it was Jim Crane that said it or if it was their front office that said it, number one priority is to re-sign Alex Bregman. I think if Alex Bregman is looking for $300 million, I don't know that there's any team that's willing to pay that. I think he will go out and he will get the most dollars he can from a team. And then just like Alex Bregman said when they were trying to figure out, you know, who's going to win the American League West, I guess we'll never know because I think Alex Bregman's going back to Houston.
Why hasn't it happened?
Why hasn't it happened?
Yeah.
Because he has given Houston a ton of years under team control, and I think it is the pro thing to do for both sides, to let him go out and see. Let him go out and see what is out there and to bring back the number. I think there are cases where you can bring back a number from free agency and say, will you match this? Because I love it here. I have done so much here. Because if that's not the case, if you don't do that, then that relationship's fractured. And I don't feel like, or I saw anything where that relationship is fractured. So I'm saying he's going back to Houston. But what he would bring to another team, you guys hit on it. How many guys do what he does in the playoffs? Yes, push that aside. This guy has never struck out 100 times in one season. You can say whatever you want about the trash can scandal. To me, when you put that in a lineup, he is a career 132 OPS plus, under 100 strikeouts. This guy is consistently putting together an at-bat that the rest of the team can feed off of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And listen, and let me add to that too, Kratzy. Now let me ask you the best fit. I think the best fit is to stay in Houston. If you ask me what the best fit for Alex Bregman would be, I think the park is conducive to his game. Right, I spoke about this earlier. I don't really like Alex Bregman in Comerica for 81 games. Right, at that park, I've seen it get into people's head, even with the adjustments that they made. I think the fit would be the best fit, but I think it also hasn't happened. And I don't say why it hasn't happened because I don't know if it's true or not, but I do think because of who his agent is, I do think there is a reality that the number is extremely high right now. The one thing I worry about is this, Scotty. The last thing I want to see happen to Alex Bregman is him turn down a 6-year 178 or a 7-year 172, and he has to go do a 1-year deal and it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Like that's what we saw last year. With Jordan Montgomery, some guys signed extremely late, signed shorter deals than they wanted to. I worry about that when it comes to position players, especially, and that's the last thing I want to happen to Alex Bregman. So again, that's an in-camp situation, decision. But I hope that number I mean, it's crazy. 300 is crazy to me. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Yeah, I agree. He's not getting 300. This would be different from Houston in terms of how they bring a player back. It's not like they're incapable of doing it, but Jose Altuve never got to free agency. Yordan Alvarez never got to free agency. George Springer got to free agency. Carlos Correa got to free agency. They left. And also, Jim Crane has somewhat of a mandate on how far they will go for a player. They like to lock in players for a team-friendly-ish deal. I could make the case that Altuve's last deal here is not necessarily so team-friendly, but it would just go against the grain a little bit for them. But I do agree with you, Kratz, that he might survey the market, or for Cam, he might survey the market and say, okay, this is a good number. It's not an amazing number. I'll bring it back to Houston, and we're good there. I just think most of the time when a guy gets to free agency, if he really wants to stay with the original team where he's at, then that ends up happening. Or if he doesn't have a market developing, then he ends up going back to his team. But otherwise, they're usually out because it's like they had enough time to figure this out. Like, okay, Aaron Judge wanted to be a Yankee. He was just going to the dance, doing a little wiggle to get a little more money out of the Yankees. That's it. That's all that happened there. Chris Davis didn't have anyone playing ball in the same stratosphere, right? We talked about him the other day. The Orioles re-sign him. There's been a few cases like that where a guy goes, he tests the market. It's like, there's not anybody playing ball at this rate. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to try and play, a little back and forth with my team. JT Real Muto comes to mind as well. Surprisingly, his market wasn't as strong as it should have been in my mind. And the Phillies really wanted him, and that stayed. So that's the only reason why I get suspicious when we get to this point. Aaron Nola is a good example as well. But in Aaron Nola's case, Kratz, the Phillies did still, I think, offer him the most money, and he wanted to go back.
Right.
So you're saying that's the case here?
Yeah, I think it's the case. I think we have rare cases where people are constantly with one team their entire career, drafted, signed. Now I'm questioning. Bregman's drafted by them, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Out of
yes,
LSU.
He was. Yeah, because remember he was pissed that he wasn't the first pick. I don't remember who it was.
Yes. Yes. So, and I think he's one of them. And I think you throw if the Astros were changing direction, if the Astros had a Jeremy Pena to come in and take his position, if the Astros had somebody that was going to come and play third base for him, it's not like you're going to go out in free agency and get somebody better than Bregman. And the Astros aren't going anywhere. They want to win the division again. Just because they didn't make the World Series, it doesn't mean they're not a good team. And he's the best available at that position.
I agree with you, man. And I do think this, to add to Kratz's point, I don't know what that number is, but I do think because he has taken team-friendly deal, because he has been extremely loyal to the organization, I think in good faith, which is very rare in sports and business, I think what will happen at the end of the day, whether he decides to take the deal or not, I do see them offering him an extremely fair deal. I really do. Now it's up to him whether he decides to accept it or not. But I think that's what Kratzy, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like that's kind of what you're hinting to.
100%. And I'll even go. I think it was George Steinbrenner said it. I think Jeter said it. But anyway, it was one of the Yankees. George said, "I'm going to screw you over in your rookie contracts all the way up until you become a free agent, and then I'm going to pay you for what you did. And so you'll probably screw me over at that point." Like it's a rough way of saying it, but there's a pro way that Jim Crane goes about his business. And some people can say, well, you didn't bring George Springer back. How did that work out? Like they still kept playing. They still kept going into the playoffs. They didn't bring Correa back. Still winning the division. All that stuff. So I think Jim Crane knows where value is, and I think that value is in Bregman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the replacements are getting thinner these days for this team with the farm system. That factors into Jeremy Pena was ready to roll. There are some names. I know people throw some names out. The young dude, forgetting how to say it, DiVincenzo. I'm messing up the name.
But even with Jeremy Pena's production right now, you look like you need to keep Alex Bregman if you can.
True. The bat
Let's
hasn't
be
come
honest.
around like it should yet. You're right. Yeah, that's true. I just think, I mean, that's the fit there. You hope that also he was dealing with the elbow, he got some cleanup surgery already this offseason too, so that, the power will come back a little bit more this year. The walks were down a little bit. I think teams were attacking him a little bit more. He did win a Gold Glove. I also think his defense got better by process of removing a statue at first. Jose Abreu looked really bad at first. That dude's not picking any of your bad throws. It just wasn't happening for him anymore. I'm sorry. I mean, he had a great run, but they got much better instantly on that front. So, this is a dude.
I wanted to ask you this too, Scotty. Can the Astros win if they stay under the CBT? I'm just being real. Like, with the way that it's shaping up, can they? And I know what Jim Crane said, but can they? I get it. That doesn't mean pay Alex Bregman $300 million, but I think there's a world. I mean, in my head, in the perfect world, you can get Alex Bregman for a nice deal and go get a Christian Walker. Now you're right back in it, because I think, I'm just. What do you think? I don't
know if they can fit both of those. Yeah, I don't know if they can fit both guys in what they're trying to do. I mean, they're big spenders. They spend a lot more. They don't need both.
You don't think they need both? Who's gonna? You're okay with their first base situation?
I'm okay with how their team is constructed. The only thing I'm not okay with is you gotta go pay Tucker soon, but that's not this year's problem. They're going to go out and they're going to win another National League West.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll get to a team that actually might lose Pete Alonso to the Astros if the Astros don't keep Alex Bregman. Deesha Thosar coming up next to join us about obviously the Soto sweepstakes, and I even saw that little Yoenis Cespedes comeback attempt on socials. Maybe we'll ask Deesha about it. Cespedes is back. All right, here we are, Kratz. We are getting a little bit of news coming in. Nothing crazy, but it is non-tender day. That means some players will ultimately get cut or they'll restructure deals. So Austin Hayes was informed he's getting non-tendered by the Phillies. He got traded over from Baltimore. Didn't really work out for them, but also he went through this crazy kidney infection that he had. So the Phillies are going to move on from him. It was a tough finish for him. The Brewers signed back Erik Haas, $1.35 million plus incentives. I'm guessing that he was a potential non-tender situation. I don't know, is he still under team control or he was just a free agent? My guess is maybe he had still more team control, and so they said, "Hey, let's just do this."
You can't be non-tendered if you would be a free agent. So he must have under the 6 years. Yeah, he has 4 years and 58 days. So it's a case where I'm sure how they did it is they came to him. They said, "We're going to." What'd you say? 1.5. He gets
1.35. Yep.
1.35. When I signed mine was 1.2. So it's a similar thing. You take it, or tomorrow is the non-tender deadline. Maybe we'll non-tender you because we'll figure out another person to be our third catcher on this roster. Or maybe if we don't go and get another Gary Sanchez, you'll be our number 2. For Erik Haas, no-brainer. He is a perfect fit for this team. Sneaky good player, too. With ridiculous thump. Just punches out a little much.
Right. But really nice in a backup role to have him there. And then also the Braves signed Carlos D. Rodriguez to a non-guaranteed 1-year deal. I mean, we don't go over all of these usually, but it is kind of interesting. I mean, he put up good numbers in the Brewers system. The Brewers are getting a little bit of that 40-man logjam going on right now where they've got a lot of position player depth. So it's a lefty, good D, little more on the pop, big time athlete plus runner. So, but he turns 24 next month. So someone else is going to give him a chance. Braves are like, yo, we could use that outfield depth, where the Brewers are pretty stacked with a lot of guys they have to make decisions on.
These are not guaranteed either. Unless you have over 5 years of service, it's not a guaranteed contract. So really there's not a lot of pain for the organization. Maybe a portion of it is negotiated to be guaranteed, but it's not all guaranteed.
And that was your nitty-gritty report. Here we go. We're back on FT talking about the New York Mets. Deesha Thosar joining us to break it all down. And of course, they are very much in the news with what's going on with Juan Soto. She's a Fox Sports MLB reporter and columnist. Deesha, great to have you on. How has your Juan Soto sweepstakes tracking been going?
Pretty slow going, right, so far. And of course, thanks for having me on. I think it kind of revved up a little this week talking to Hal Steinbrenner at the owners' meetings. A little unexpected. I think the Yankees always do a good job of making Hal available at these events. But I was surprised that he was so willing to kind of hold a scrum with maybe a dozen or maybe less reporters, especially right after their meeting with Soto in California. So I think the position he took to even talk about it is a little telling, in that Steve Cohen, who was also at the meetings, did not talk about it. He did speak to reporters off the record for a few minutes before he went upstairs to kind of conduct the meetings, but he stayed out of it. And I think that's kind of a choice that he made. He feels maybe that he's in a strong position, that he doesn't need to make matters worse or better. Whereas even going off of Hal Steinbrenner's comments when he did talk about Soto, it was, well, I don't know how confident we are. Sure, we're in the mix. I have no idea. It was like a little anxious, a little, how are you actually going to sign this guy? And really, there was no news, right, that came out of it one way or the other about how close they are. So I think even just the choice to kind of let out his thoughts and feelings on how that meeting went is a departure, right, from how the Mets and Steve Cohen decided to handle it, which was to kind of stay silent and let their kind of financial flexibility that everyone's afraid of do most of the talking.
Who needs this more? I mean, we're going to put it right out there. Who needs this more? Steve Cohen's ability to flex his financial muscle, and if he doesn't get Juan Soto, well, maybe he doesn't really flex his. Or is Hal saying, we've been flexing our muscle for decades?
Yeah, no, I think Hal is feeling the pressure, and I think the Yankees need it more. Steve Cohen has definitely proved that he can flex it. He's done it. He got Verlander, he got Scherzer, he signed Lindor. I mean, there's been no shortage of Steve Cohen making his presence known since he owned the club a few years ago now. And I think Hal Steinbrenner understands that he needs to get this done. He had an interesting comment about, listen, I have ears. I know what's expected of me. And I think that's not something we would have heard from him maybe early on when he first took over from his dad, George Steinbrenner, to really being the chairman of this team. I think he's putting his foot down on a free agent outside of someone like Judge. The last time we saw Hal being this upfront about a deal, at least that he needed to get done, was Judge's free agency. Now we know, of course, they had a talk at the end that got the deal done. I think Hal coming in front of reporters, in front of cameras, saying he means it. He's going to go as far as he thinks he can take this Soto sweepstakes, even going as so far as say we have the ability to sign anyone, I think is really telling of just how important Hal Steinbrenner knows that he has to not only reach this deal to get Soto back. I think the other side of that, this reality where maybe they don't get it done and Soto goes to the Mets, is, I think, for the Yankees, it should be incomprehensible. I don't know really how they can come back from something like that at this point.
I want to play devil's advocate, Deesha. Let me ask you this. Let's say Juan Soto does sign with the Mets, and we've seen what the Dodgers have done on the West Coast, and we know the drive that Steve Cohen has for his organization to be great. Is there a world where if they get Soto, he's going to do whatever he can to maybe keep Pete Alonso or go get as many pieces as he can to compete with teams like the Dodgers moving forward? Where is he on that, and where is he on Pete Alonso?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm of the camp, right? There's two camps here where if the Mets sign Soto, oh, no way they're getting Pete Alonso. I think, no, they can definitely afford to do both. They're getting 150 million or so off the books this year. But even more than that, Steve Cohen has showed he's not afraid of the luxury tax. He's fine with surpassing it. He can kind of handle that burden. Draft picks is another issue now. Like, I think David Stearns kind of owning that front office will maybe talk some more money sense into decisions like that. But I think the Mets absolutely, after, if they do get Soto, should then pivot to keeping Pete Alonso, not just for what it would mean for the team. But also, Pete is right now being a little overlooked in these Juan Soto sweepstakes, right? He is one of those faces of the franchise alongside Francisco Lindor. He's really warmed himself up to the fan base, especially after that postseason run. They only even got so far as the NLCS because of what he did in Milwaukee with that huge home run in the ninth inning. So that changed, I think, the game, not just for Pete, the fan base, the Mets, all of the factors he needed on his side in a regular season that was actually his down year, I think turned around in that postseason to now there is a reality where they can keep both Soto and Pete, keep adding on. And I think that was telling too with Hal Steinbrenner when he mentioned that Soto is asking teams, what's your pipeline? What's your player development process? So Soto wants it all. He's not, of course, just here to win a World Series. We know that. But if he's going to sign a long-term deal in the 8, 9, 10-year range, 11, he wants to make sure the pipeline is also right up to speed that they can keep winning, whichever team he actually ends up with.
So what I'm hearing you say right now is let's not get too caught up in this Mark Vientos hype and let's really value what we have at first base. That's what I'm hearing you say, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mark Vientos is great. He can stay at third.
I'm just glad somebody else is feeling me right now because I just think what Pete has done, I just don't think Mark Vientos can replicate that. I don't. I think he's a great young player, but I think Pete brings a lot of value, and especially you talk about guys being able to play in New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mark Vientos, I think, wouldn't be looked at as sort of this Pete Alonso replacement. I think he can be looked at as, sure, they can pivot to Vientos at first base. But just like you said, all the things that Pete represents to the Mets, that's really, really hard to just copy and paste. Mark Vientos right now is definitely showing the Mets and the franchise, the fan base, who he is, what he can do. But we need to see more of it, right? Before you can kind of hang your hat on the Vientos train and go that route. I think he has to replicate a season like he did this year over and over again, which is what Pete Alonso did starting with his rookie year. He really put himself on the map and then has been an above average player from that point on. Even this year, when it was a down year, he was still better than league average. So in that way, yeah, I think the Vientos is not so much a polar bear replacement as, oh yeah, we can put him at first, he'll be productive for us, but now who are we going to get to replace Vientos at third because of his big season and his strong season?
Deesha, one of the things we do is we represent and we talk about what's actually going on the screen. And is that a real fiddly fig that you have in the background? Because
it sure
we have
is.
plants. Yeah. That's impressive. That is
this is my real background.
Fig.
Yeah, she's been through a lot, actually. Her name is Figgy. But we finally found a good growth spurt this past summer, and she's been thriving ever since. I'm glad you noticed.
That is a large plant. We like our plants here at FT. But everybody needs to listen to what Deesha's saying because you're Deesha Damas, writing the article that you wrote about Tarik Skubal. So if you're saying this about Vientos, people need to perk up and listen. Tell us about the article that you reposted conveniently right when Tarik Skubal won the American League Cy Young. But tell us about this great article that you wrote.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at Detroit last offseason. I was like, this is going to be a big year for some of these guys, not just Skubal, guys like Kerry Carpenter. And of course, he ended up having a big year. But something about Skubal was, wait a second. It was one of those things where we might know on the inside he has potential, this journey he has, all of this matters about how hard it was for him to get to this point. But the world doesn't know. And what caught my attention was that people don't even know how to say his name. I was actually having a debate with reporters who've covered him about, wait, is it Tarik? Is it Tarik? Tariq? What is it? How do you say it? That was actually the first question I asked him in April, kind of leading into this feature of how he's prepared to lead the Tigers. Like, how do you actually pronounce your name? Like, put it on the record. And it is actually Tarik, like Derek with a T. And I think it really can be like just going from a microcosm to macro in that way of like, who is this guy? And over the course of a season, right, we saw him show us over and over again. In that first interview I had with him in April, there was this edge to him of, I'm not going to just settle for how we've been viewed. I want the Tigers to be dominant. I want to take them there. And that you don't hear that every day, not even from guys who might not be in the national spotlight, but even leaders of teams, faces of MLB, don't really go there anymore, especially in these days where most players are just kind of saying what they want on social media, not as much with reporters being themselves. So that stood out to me in that, wow, this guy doesn't just have the stuff, which of course he did because of his journey of how hard it was for him to get to that point through injuries and setbacks and making himself known, but also that attitude of chip on your shoulder. This is who we really are. And I think I kind of knew back in April, he's going to have some sort of impact. I did think he was my pick, even with a Fox Sports. We had team picks before the season started of who's going to be the Cy Young. So I picked him for that too. I don't know if that means anything with Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, and that whole future, like you said, but it did work out this year with Skubal, who just had such a great season. I think he really showed everyone what he's about, and I think that's great for the sport.
It's so easy to spend all of Steve Cohen's money, so let's just keep spending it. Let's keep spending. What does this rotation need to look like? What are they bringing back that they're excited about, and what do they have to go out and do? Because you've already spent on Pete Alonso and Juan Soto. We know Uncle Steve has got a lot of cash, but you still need 5 guys to start.
Yeah, exactly. What I love about, I think, this offseason with the Steve Cohen and his billions and his big wallet like looming over the whole industry is that this time he has another weapon with David Stearns leading a full offseason. Last year they went and got him, and he was Steve Cohen's big white whale for a few years. And now he's finally starting off the offseason fresh with a David Stearns making some of the best decisions as an executive that this sport has seen in terms of trades and signings and how to get creative, like Stearns did in Milwaukee. Now Stearns is operating with those billions. So I'm very interested in how far they take this, because guys like Corbin Burns, right? The Mets should absolutely be in the conversation for the top starter on the market. They need to build a whole rotation. So start there. And then after that, who makes sense? Max Fried, Blake Snell, all these free agents that are demanding a lot, but I think Stearns can kind of bring some of these executives and agents down to earth, and just with his reasoning, where I think in the past the Mets were in flux there. They didn't have a true front office leader. I think they could have been taken advantage of much more easily. And now it's, okay, we have to make kind of these smart offers or it's not going anywhere, even though at the end of the day, it might be that Steve Cohen does top any other offer that any other team has for some free agents. So I think they have to be in the mix for definitely the top guys in the market, those guys I mentioned. Out of those, I do think Burns and Stearns connection with Milwaukee at least leads to some familiarity that can give the Mets an edge there. But I like Max Fried as someone who kind of is being, maybe there's some ice on his free agency this year just because of the other stars ahead of him. But he already had Tommy John surgery. He's kind of battled through some things. He had a little injury that he had to overcome with the Braves. And now I think he's in a good position that he's been super consistent. And there's not that many left-handers who are kind of have that market as aces on in free agency right now. And I think the Mets should absolutely be going for someone like Fried and maybe Burns to kind of set the tone with their rotation this offseason.
Does Yoenis Cespedes, the news that he'd like to come back to the Mets, does he know that the Wilpons don't own the team anymore? Because pretty much his last stint here, it was just like Yoenis Cespedes would go to Wilpon and be like, hey, can I get my new contract? And he'd be like, sure, come over to the house and hang out. So does Yoenis know that?
Yeah, it's funny because he just threw out one of these first pitches in the NLCS, and it was like, wait, I still have questions about why you left the team and when in 2020, because I was there as a beat reporter for New York Daily News in that crazy pandemic season. One day Cespedes is there, the next he's not, and we hear Brody Van Wagenen, who's the GM at the time, kind of ripping him through reporters for his decision to leave. It was like this really heated departure. It was not, no one was happy on either side. And now suddenly he's throwing out the first pitch. The Mets are in the NLCS, and unfortunately, Cespedes did not take questions that day, but it would have been something like, where were you in August 2020, and how are you back here now? So I think he definitely is well aware, of course, the Wilpons are no longer in charge, and the fact that he said in Instagram, it was like, if I play anywhere, it's going to be just for the Mets. I think that's great for the Mets. He looked like a tank when he was throwing out that first pitch. Definitely looked like a player they could have used in the playoffs. But he hasn't seen major league pitching. If we're going to be realistic about this, he hasn't played in a long time. He did hold a workout for teams to come see him in 2021, and then there was some activity in a Dominican league, but the Mets should absolutely maybe just see how this goes. They could use him at DH. There is an opening there. Cespedes is 39 years old and needs to hit a fastball at 100 miles per hour in 2025. So let's see if he can do that first, I think.
And guess what? I mean, that wasn't the only time that the Mets didn't know where Yoenis Cespedes was. They didn't know where he was half the time, and I'm not just making that up. I know from people directly with the team back then that he would get hurt, and they literally did not know where he was. I'd be like, how's the rehab going? They're like, we don't even know where he is right now. Like, let alone how the recovery's going, where he's at in the rehab process. They go, we cannot locate him. Not answering us. Don't really know how to handle this situation. So
probably riding horses and smoking sticks somewhere.
Exactly. I would, taking half the season off. So I would say his chances of signing with any major league ball club, based on disappearing multiple times, probably teeny tiny. And yes, he is 39. So, but it is entertaining to see him pop up there and maybe say, "Oh, I want to make it right. I want to show up for work every day." But it's a little too late. Deesha, this was fun. Thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate the time. Enjoy the weekend.
Of course. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Thank you. Check out all of Deesha's work on Fox Sports, and we'll post some of these clips on Twitter as well with a tag to see her handle. All right, BetMGM wrapping up the awards week. So we look back at some futures results. We'll start with the AL MVP. The most bets were placed on Bobby Witt Jr. throughout the season. Aaron Judge received the highest handle, as in the most cash laid down for him. And then the biggest liability actually was Witt, based on his odds. The closing odds leaders for both sides here really were obviously a lock at some point. But just interesting to see where the money was being placed and where the book would have been hit the hardest. On the National League side, you have Harper receiving the highest ticket, the highest handle, of course, going to Ohtani. Harper would have been the biggest liability. Again, I mean, it depends on when you placed it throughout the season, but pretty early on, I would say after Mookie Betts went down with an injury. And I'm trying to remember when Ohtani really started running away with things. Because Betts had a hot start. I mean, it was only a few weeks. And everyone's like, oh, this is going to be the MVP, right? Because they're like, he moves to shortstop. He's still the dude, but he got hurt. So then you knock him off the list. Ketel Marte was having a little run. He got hurt, and Ohtani just took off even to another level. So this really wasn't that close. We had the Judge Witt debate for a little bit, Cam. Like, if there was a point where if Judge fell off and Witt went on a crazy run to end the season, he could have made a case, but that didn't really happen. Both bats slowed down a little bit for those players, especially on the power side.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Bobby Witt Jr., Judge went through his super cold streak early, and Bobby Witt was on the opposite end of that, where he started to kind of, struggle of late. You kind of hit that wall, that back end of the season wall, so to speak. So, but yeah, I think it was pretty obvious Aaron Judge was the guy. I'm looking forward to seeing, who Kratz picks for next year. But I know who I'm picking in both leagues. I think we're going to have a repeat.
Hey, if they stay healthy, that's definitely the case. All right, BetMGM fam, there is BetMGM for the poker crowd. You can now combine player pools in Michigan and New Jersey. So that just means bigger prize pools, more players, more chances to win. There's a brand new nightly schedule with over $400,000 in guarantees each week. No better time to hit the felt on BetMGM poker. We like to play. We got another event coming up in January, which we'll announce soon. But basically, New Jersey and Michigan tied together now.
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
Walker Buehler said, "Oh, no. I just went from the Dodgers to a question from the Oakland A's. Hey, you want to have a conversation? And the answer is this.
Dikembe?
I'm sorry.
Dikembe?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Where are you guys playing next year? What about in 26? What about in 27? Bye. So, story here from a little chat that Mark Kratz was having at a school. He told everyone that, where was it? It was at USC, that the Oakland A's reached out to Walker Buehler, and he said, no thanks, not interested in having a free agent conversation about playing in Sacramento for the next several seasons. Thoughts on this, Cam?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just like, of course, no, I would never. Why would you? You just won a World Series. You literally have come up with one of the best organizations as far as like how we do things, right? Do things and everything. How you do one thing is how you do everything, is what they say. Well, we know what the Dodgers do and how they do so many things well. Why would Walker Buehler, a guy who literally showed that, okay, he was coming back into his own in the playoffs, starting to get that velo back, starting to get that edge back, why in the world, unless you want to offer me some Garrett Cole or some ridiculous type money, why would I ever go play in Sacramento for the next 3 to 4 seasons? And then after that, they still have such an uphill climb as far as what they want to rebuild, because with that right there, you think Walker Buehler is going to be the first free agent to be like, nah, I'm good. It's going to be, man, this sets the Oakland A's back so far. And, you know, the guy that I feel the worst for is Mark Kratz. Hopefully he can get out of there soon and get him a good team and a good organization behind him. I know they're competitive, but listen, there's only so much a manager can do.
I love some of the players on the A's.
Absolutely.
I love what they're doing. Like, if you watch baseball, you need to love what the core of that team is right now, from a energy standpoint, from an ability standpoint. You're talking about dudes getting MVP votes on this roster. But what Walker Buehler did, he just was like, everybody stand up, because we ain't about this. Like, you don't have to. Now, this is no knock against different guys who are going to, Aledmus Diaz the other year, he signed a 1-year deal, big league deal with the A's. Like, it's not a knock against the guys who are doing that. Walker Buehler has been a Cy Young type of pitcher. He has been a big leaguer. Back in the day, he even came out, and I kind of was hating on him for it. He's like, why do we need so much minor leagues? Like, this dude's not a minor league baseball player. Like, he has been a big leaguer since he was drafted. He spent very little time in the minor leagues. He has ridiculous stuff, and he's looking to rebuild his value, I think, in this trade market. I don't think he's getting, the long-term extension that everybody thought he was going to get 2.5 years ago, when he was one of the most dominant pitchers for 4 years in this game. So he's going to rebuild his value, but he ain't rebuilding his value in Sacramento. He's going to rebuild his value on a team that's seen what he's done in the playoffs, because that's all he stays in the playoffs. Like, that's all he's ever done. And this is really going to show you what the A's are going to be up against. And it's they created this problem, and to me, it sucks for the players that are already there, because they need extra players to push them to 500, over 500, into the playoffs, all that stuff.
The team known for mastering efficiency and just having a cheap as hell owner who's poison to the game is going to have to overpay for quality free agents. I'm just going to let that sentence sink in. Just let that sentence sink in.
People in the back, please say it one more time.
The team with an inept owner who is poisonous to our sport, who's cheap as hell, who didn't want to give people a dime even during the pandemic, right? Who also has a front office that has often tried to master efficiency, and they're not the only ones, right? They were one of the Moneyball leaders when we started. Now has to hit free agency, pick up a phone if they actually want to be serious about taking that next step and bringing in a big boy, and overpay significantly, in my mind. If you're trying to get a name like Walker Buehler, I mean, the conversation has to be, hey, call us back, and then we've got to double what you're getting offered. And they're not going to do that. So this is going to be a very, very difficult test for the Oakland A's to try and bring in the players that they think they're going to bring in. Otherwise, you're not going to do it.
Like Kratz said it, you can sign a Cam Maybin for a 1 year, 2 year deal, a guy who like, you know what I mean? Like, just to be real, it's just honest. Like, you can get the role guy, but if you really want a organization changing player, you got to overplay right now. You have to. And why would Rocky Buehler go to Oakland when he could go to New York? Possibly. Right. I'm just saying. You know,
plenty of teams want a reclamation project with his track record. And exactly. He said, and it's that meme. It's that meme. I don't know if you guys seen that meme. Like, oh yeah, I tried to call you, but it's like the old school phone that used to have a cord. Like, it's just the phone and there's no cord connected. Like, I couldn't get through. Like, I couldn't, like, what? No.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We'll see who they get, but they got to overpay. Be right back, FT fam. We'll slap hands. We'll look at what we're bringing to the table next week. Okay, so I want to go back for a moment, Dave. You know this, and that was my first reaction actually yesterday before the news was official. You know, there was like the reports coming out, whatever, which is fun. Hey, it looks like Dave Sims is going to be the new Yankees radio broadcaster. And I wrote how, for me, I am a night owl and I watch late night games, right? And for me, when I know Dave is on the call, I'm locked into the Mariners game and I will give that favor over some other games. Obviously, it was fun to watch their pitching staff this year, but what are your feelings about your time in Seattle, people that have reached out, and then even the layer of what you experienced with the team? Because you're going to the Yankees. You just made your pitch to Juan Soto. You were the voice of a franchise that, especially right now, has so much talent, but has so much not negative history, but you can put it into words better than I can. I mean, damn, that city deserves more playoff status.
Well, man, I'm telling you, it's a very good sports town. It's got maybe the hungriest fan base there is. I mean, so many other, here in New York, you expect it, playoffs, World Series, yada, yada, yada. But, that'd be a first time thing in Seattle. And I always harken back to the division series against Houston a few years ago. The game 3 goes 18 innings. Those fans, and I don't care what the numbers say, say capacity was 45 and change. Heck, there was like 53,000 people at that ballpark. And they stood for the last 9 innings and cheered their lungs out, cheered their hearts out. It's a terrific fan base, dying for a winner. So many good people, in the organization, of people, and then friends I've made around the area in Seattle. It's just been, stuff I'll never forget. So, I wish them well, and I tell you, it still hacks me off that with that starting rotation that was so good, and all those cats, with the exception of Brian Wu, but he was outstanding. For the most part, made all their starts, and we missed the playoffs by a freaking game. And I can't tell you, the last 8-9 weeks, every coach that I know, in opposing teams and players and managers, dude, we do not want to place you effing guys in the playoffs. Not with that pitching staff. And then to finish a game, it was one of the worst hitting teams ever, but one of the best pitching teams ever. So, yeah, it's a shame it didn't work out, man. But a lot of good dudes on that team. A lot of them are going to be back this year, this coming year, and wish them well, except when they play Los Yankees.
All right, let's slap. And a sad reminder to the FT fam that next week we got Monday, we got Tuesday, we got Wednesday. Thursday is actually a holiday. It's called Thanksgiving. We will not do a live show on Thursday. We will not do a live show on Black Friday when you should be shopping or hanging out with your fam or doing whatever. So we will not be on for 2 whole weekdays in a row. I know it's weird. It's honestly weird. We're on every weekday.
I'm cooking, early. If you guys want me to come on, I will. I mean, I'll cook for them, and I'll come on. I mean, listen, I'm just saying.
We're back. We're back. All right, so we're back. We're doing a show on Thanksgiving. It'll be a 12-hour marathon. No, I'm kidding. So we do have some fun treats for you next week, early next week. Kratz, you want to run through your hat while you tell us what Monday looks like? Because I know you were part of the guest booking.
I mean, we got Jacob Stallings, not the hat. The hat is the New Haven Ravens. Only grinders know the New Haven Ravens. Cam wasn't even drafted with the New Haven Ravens when I played for the New Haven Ravens. This was 03. Cam came in 2005 and green out of high school. But yeah, New Haven Ravens played at the Yale Bowl.
New Haven.
And on Monday, right out the gate, little Stephen Vogt, Manager of the Year. What a butt kisser. To win that award.
He was such a classic. That dude's going to be a manager, and then he won Manager of the Year and took a team that doesn't have a ton of resources into a pretty nice little division win. Not really close for most of the year, with them leading the pack and having a strong season and really putting a good performance together, even in the playoffs, getting bounced by the Yankees in the ALCS. So anyway, if you have questions for Voter, we'll get to them on Monday. And then same with Jacob Stallings, get ourselves a little rocky and one of the early signings in the offseason. It's true. I mean, you got the deal done. It's a major league deal. He's a millionaire.
We're twins.
We're twins.
Yeah. Thanks.
He's probably a little bit taller than Kratz, but Kratz is definitely more built. That's my measurable breakdown. And
I'm faster than him.
And you're faster. Does he have his hair?
For sure.
Yeah.
We have digits. StatCast just lets you know.
For sure.
See everyone on Monday.